Well, thank you, Claire, for that kind introduction. I note that you've assumed that I'm going to speak in English, but you're right. Thank you, Bernard, for hosting this event today. And although I'm sorry that I haven't been able to be here throughout the day, I do have my spies present, so I am well informed about the issues that have arisen during the course of the morning. And I should also say that in creating this event, you happily allowed a series of really extremely useful dinner meetings to take place last night, both between myself and Minister Le Drian and between the participants in the high-level working group on defence procurement. So thank you for having created the conditions that allowed us an extra meeting. Less than 3 weeks after the publication of the French Livre Blanc and just over a month before we published the outcome of our spending review for 2015-16 here in the UK, this year's conference has been a timely occasion to take stock of defence cooperation between our two countries and to look ahead to the common challenges that we face. And they're not exclusively about money, but we did discover last night that we have some very common challenges in the area of money. The high-level representation here from both governments, from both armed forces, and from the defence industries demonstrates the importance that both countries attach to implementing the Lancaster House Treaty and the 2012 Declaration, and to seizing the windows of opportunity that arise. I know this is a theme that's come out this morning, that the different political and strategic review cycles in the two countries inevitably mean that there will be windows of opportunity when we can move forward, and there will be other periods when the realities of democratic politics dictate that we will have to wait for events to occur. I know that the workshops this morning covered a good deal of ground, looking at our progress in delivering the measures contained in those agreements, and looking at areas where we can cooperate even further together in the mutual interest of our two countries. The Lancaster House Treaty was principally a political commitment by our two governments to improve our collective defence capability. As Minister Le Drian said this morning, it is based on the simple observation that it is almost impossible to imagine a threat to the essential interests of either country which is not also a threat to the essential interests of the other country. And we will improve that collective defence capability through UK and French forces working more closely together, by planning our capabilities collaboratively, and by sharing infrastructure where it makes sense to do so. And that commitment to greater military cooperation made in November 2010 has been put to the test in ways that were unforeseen when the commitment was made, most recently in Mali, but perhaps most significantly in operations over Libya. But after 2.5 years, and notwithstanding a change of French government, that political will from the Prime Minister and the French President down remains as strong as ever. In fact, given the significant fiscal pressures in both our countries, combined with the ever-increasing cost of cutting-edge military technology, the logic of cooperation is increasingly clear. As pressure upon domestic defence budgets increases, we're having to look for new ways to deliver the same outputs with less resource. And a key part of that for both of us is cooperating more closely with international partners. One of the most striking features to me of the Livre Blanc is the similarity of its analysis to that of our own SDSR in 2010. Setting aside the specific challenges for France of garrisoning the overseas departments and territories, the two documents are virtually interchangeable in terms of analysis of the challenges facing us. Looking back over the last 12 months, since the change of government in France, I hadn't realised when I was preparing this speech that it is 12 months exactly to the day, which is fortuitous. But looking back over that 12 months, the practical operational cooperation and the collaboration that's been established between our two countries over Libya has continued to develop. In Mali, French-led operations have reversed the advance of Islamist extremists from the north, which was threatening to reach the capital. And I must say that the rapidity and effectiveness of the French response to the urgent challenge in Mali was hugely impressive. The global nature of international terrorism today means that both the UK and France have a clear interest in the stability of Mali and in ensuring that its territory does not become an ungoverned space available to Al-Qaeda and its associates from which to organize attacks on the West. That is why, from the start, we have supported France's intervention in Mali and moved rapidly to provide logistical support to C-17 strategic airlift aircraft and surveillance support with our Sentinel aircraft in Dakar. It was very important to me, and I think Minister Le Drian touched on this morning, but it was very important to me that we demonstrated our commitment to the Lancaster House Agreement by responding immediately and positively to the French request as soon as we received it. And I'm delighted that we were quick enough to be the first responder. Looking to the medium term, we have committed a 40-man British team to the EU training mission in Mali to help build stability in country by enabling the Malian government forces to provide their own security. Closer to home in the Mediterranean, British and French forces engaged last autumn in the first major naval and amphibious exercise, Corsican Lion, to test the maritime component of the new combined joint expeditionary force. Also allowed me, by the way, to test the quality of lunch on board the Charles de Gaulle, which I can tell you is very considerably better than military rations I've tasted on British warships. Last month in Scotland, in Exercise Joint Warrior, French and British troops joined forces to develop their air, land and sea interoperability as part of the Combined Joint Expeditionary Force. This Combined Joint Expeditionary Force is one of the principal measures agreed under the Lancaster House Treaty that will underpin our future interoperability, with a deadline for achieving full operating capability in 2016. And off the south coast of France, I saw for myself the impressive way that our respective flagships and supporting air, land and naval assets overcame technical, linguistic and doctrinal challenges to hone a combined force capable of projecting power far from the shores of our respective homelands. And I was pleased that, Stu, you made the point this morning that the enthusiasm for this relationship is not just at the top among the senior ranks, but also at the bottom among the people who are learning to work together on the flight decks, in the landing craft. And that's what will make, if we're frank about this, that is what has made our collaboration with the Americans work over many years, the relationships that are built at the lowest level of command. And that is what we have to work on, recognizing that we have the challenge of language to deal with. That is what we have to work on to make the Combined Joint Expeditionary Force as effective as it possibly can be. So I'm clear that this is a project which is on track to deliver a real, effective and deployable joint capability. Crucial to being able to deploy these forces is, of course, the way in which we equip and organise them to deliver optimum military effect. Here in Britain, we're pushing ahead with our reform of defence equipment acquisition process. We're withdrawing our forces from Germany and reforming the basing laydown of our regular forces in the UK. And I will shortly be announcing detailed plans to both increase the size of our reserve forces and to integrate them fully with their regular counterparts. At the same time, we've put the Ministry of Defence's finances back on a sustainable footing, balancing the defence budget for the first time in a generation, while ensuring that our forces have the equipment they need to retain their cutting-edge capabilities. And I know that in the run-up to the publication of the Livre Blanc, our French counterparts have been going through a very similar balancing process. The Livre Blanc itself is a considerable achievement. The vision of highly skilled, well-equipped, expeditionary French armed forces and the willingness to deploy them alongside allies is closely aligned with our own vision of smaller but better equipped and more deployable British armed forces under Future Force 2020. And I want to place on record my appreciation to the French government and to Minister Le Drian in particular for the way in which they involved the UK through our ambassador in Paris in the commission overseeing the Livre Blanc process. And also for his offer this morning to help us with our SDSR 2015 process, an offer which we will certainly accept, and I know that we already have a French staff officer on the working group that is preparing the ground for that 2015 strategic review. I would also like to thank the French government for confirming their intention to proceed with our cooperation on the future anti-surface guided weapon programme, another step forward in the delivery of the Lancaster House Treaty and the 2012 Joint Declaration. It is clear to us that this was a political decision at the highest level, designed to support the treaty and the progress that we are making under it, and it is received and appreciated as such. This missile will provide the sort of capability that we will both need in potential joint operations in the future, and it will also give a further boost to the successful bilateral industrial partnership in MBDA. I'm pleased to be able to say that this level of close cooperation reflects, I hope I can say, a strong personal relationship which Minister Le Drian and I, despite inhabiting different parts of the political spectrum, have forged over the last 12 months of working together, as well as reflecting the institutional cooperation between the two governments. And these relationships are underpinned by a common understanding of the threats our countries face, from cyber attacks to international terrorism, from instability in the Middle East to the threat of nuclear proliferation. On the subject of the nuclear threat, I note that one of the workshop talking points this morning, intriguingly under the title The Pursuit of Happiness, was looking at whether a choice needs to be made between nuclear deterrence and conventional capabilities. I'm pleased to say that the response to that question in both the Livre Blanc and in our own SDSR is unequivocal. It is the policy of both governments to retain the nuclear deterrent. Possession of a nuclear deterrent is the ultimate guarantee of our respective nations' security. And in the case of the UK, because our deterrent is declared to NATO, it also plays a key part in guaranteeing the freedom of NATO nations from external nuclear threat. Now, some of you who've come to this meeting from France may have heard that a review is currently being undertaken into our alternatives to our nuclear deterrent based upon Trident. So I want to be clear, just for the avoidance of any misunderstanding, that review is solely intended to help inform the policy choices of our coalition partners, the Liberal Democrats, who, for reasons that they must explain, remain opposed to Trident. The UK government's position is clear, and it is to maintain and renew the nuclear deterrent based on continuous at-sea deterrence using Trident, building new ballistic missile submarines to replace the Vanguard class as they go out of service from 2028 onwards. Whether in our approach to nuclear deterrence, humanitarian intervention in Libya, or action against international terrorists such as in Afghanistan and Mali, the commonality of purpose between our two countries makes defence cooperation both desirable and productive. Our mutual interests and complementary capabilities make us natural defence partners. And today's strategic context makes us necessary defence partners. Above all, the willingness of both countries to deploy and to accept risk sets us apart from many of our neighbours. Our SDSR and the French Livre Blanc both outline the unpredictable nature of the security threats that we face. As we draw down from a decade of enduring operations, it is difficult to foresee exactly what our next adversary will look like, how the next crisis will evolve, or where next we will be required to operate. Yet we need to ensure that we are positioned to respond rapidly and decisively. Despite the fact that Britain and France have two of the largest defence budgets in the world, two of the most capable and deployable armed forces in the world, and a network of historic ties across the world that give us unparalleled global influence, access and reach, in the current climate of fiscal constraint, an increasing range of threats, and rising costs of high-tech military equipment, even for us to maintain our current levels of security, it is essential that we work together to maximise our combined defence capabilities. And that is true, I think, not only of our bilateral relationship, but also for the leadership we provide within NATO. Together, we are leading the charge to modernise NATO's structures and ensure proper political oversight of its decision-making processes. And against the backdrop of newly emerging powers and the United States' focus towards the Asia-Pacific region, Britain and France can be instrumental in helping and cajoling European NATO countries to take on greater responsibility for our own collective security. My view of this is simple. French and British leadership within European NATO is essential to ensure that NATO remains the world's most formidable and successful military alliance, underpinned by military forces that are complementary and interoperable. And demonstrating that leadership is crucial to retaining the United States' engagement in the transatlantic defence relationship. Of course, in an ideal world, all our European NATO partners would be spending more on defence, but that is not a realistic demand right now. The truth is, even within current budgets, we can deliver far greater effective capability in Europe by ensuring the budgets we do have are focused with laser precision on delivering deployable military capability backed by the political will to deploy. To achieve more equitable burden sharing, both France and the UK must push and support our partners to generate a better bang for each buck of defence expenditure, and to ensure that in those countries in which defence spending has fallen below an acceptable level, it is recognised that collective security cannot be a perpetual free lunch. That leadership is also required when it comes to CSDP. As the Vedrine report made clear, there is no need to choose between NATO and EU's CSDP. Both are necessary, but we need to ensure that CSDP remains complementary to NATO, not an expensive duplication of its structures and capabilities. The Livre Blanc's admirable clarity in this area provides a firm basis for Anglo-French cooperation to drive an increase in the overall output of CSDP by focusing on capabilities above structures and institutions. The UK's engagement in CSDP counter-piracy operations and training missions in Somalia and Mali demonstrates our commitment to effective CSDP initiatives. But as we approach the December European Council on Defence and Security, Britain and France need to work together to ensure that all our European counterparts are focused upon building capabilities rather than institutions. The ambitious programme of cooperation and reform we have set out in our respective defence reviews and in the Lancaster House Treaty provides an excellent example of what can be achieved. For the UK and France, our focus now must be on implementing those reforms to ensure that we deliver the full spectrum capabilities and the interoperability that we need. Because the threats to our security are not going to go away, and the financial pressures we're under are unlikely to recede in the near future. It will take time, but as the combined Joint Expeditionary Force exercise demonstrated, we are making rapid and demonstrable progress, and it's up to all of us in this room to make sure that we maintain the momentum in the coming year. Thank you.
Monsieur le ministre, cher Philippe Hammond, mesdames et messieurs, moi je voudrais remercier le ministre Phil Hammond d'avoir pris le temps d'échanger avec nous cet après-midi et d'être venu 2 fois à la résidence aujourd'hui. Je peux vous dire, monsieur le ministre, ce que vous avez dit est parfaitement cohérent avec ce qu'a dit Jean-Yves Le Drian ce matin, ce qui prouve combien vous êtes sur la même longueur d'onde. Je veux vous dire aussi que les officiers français vont apprendre l'anglais davantage pour être sûrs de pouvoir travailler avec leurs homologues britanniques. Et il me semble effectivement que les jeunes générations seront encore plus capables d'être interopérables avec vous. En tout cas, votre intervention vient conclure une conférence très passionnante. Une fois de plus, on a pu faire le point de la situation. Nous avons pu, monsieur le ministre, réfléchir sur ce domaine phare de notre coopération bilatérale. Merci de ce que vous avez dit sur nos idées pour préparer aussi le Conseil européen de décembre consacré aux questions de défense. Et sachez que je retiens une volonté partagée par la France, par le Royaume-Uni, d'exercer nos responsabilités en Europe, au sein de l'OTAN, dans le monde naturellement. Et j'en retiens aussi les avancées spectaculaires que vous avez relevées avec Jean-Yves Le Drian entre la France et le Royaume-Uni depuis la signature des accords de Lancaster House il y a 2 ans et demi. Votre volonté aussi de poursuivre des projets opérationnels, technologiques ou industriels sous le contrôle vigilant de nos parlementaires, que je salue très chaleureusement. Alors, l'an dernier, nous avons associé l'ambassadeur britannique à Paris cette année à notre livre blanc. Vous aurez votre SDSA en 2015. Nous espérons que la même transparence sera de rigueur, vous nous l'avez dit ce soir. Il nous semble effectivement que nous devons ensemble progresser pour, je dirais, faire en sorte que nous restions au premier rang des puissances militaires du monde. Voilà, nous nous donnons rendez-vous en 2013 à la résidence britannique à Paris. Il faudra bien choisir la date entre les élections européennes, les élections municipales en France, d'autres élections, et faire en sorte effectivement que cette session soit la plus utile possible. Donc je souhaite vous remercier de nouveau, remercier beaucoup, monsieur le ministre, les services du ministère de la Défense britannique. Vous nous avez beaucoup aidés, vous nous avez financés pour cet événement très réussi. Permettez-moi de remercier aussi beaucoup tous les services du Franco-British Council, et je salue Mme Blackstone, Mme Kenrick et Claire Schick. Et puis je remercie aussi mes collaborateurs qui, à l'ambassade, ont fait du bon travail pour faire en sorte que cet événement soit une grande réussite. Merci à toutes et tous et rendez-vous à l'année prochaine à Paris, à la résidence britannique. Merci.